Hello and welcome to Training at 45. So we've got something a bit different today. I wanted to do a review of this book that I've been reading, its impression on me, and some highlights of how it's changed my workout routine. So Steve Reeves' book, Building the Classic Physique the Natural Way. So the book includes workout routines, dietary advice, and Steve Reeves' personal insights into health and fitness. So being a lifelong natural trainer, I was of course drawn to this book, and it came highly recommended. So I've heard of Steve Reeves through other books such as The Keys to Progress by John McCallum, and having seen pictures of his physique, I was intrigued to find out more about this legend and how this was achieved. So I couldn't find a UK distributor for the book, so unfortunately I had to have additional shipping costs to order from the US, but it was easy enough to get. So the book was published in 1996, so Steve would have been like 70 years old, and it represents in part one a reflection really of his early life and training, which I found captivating, as eventually it was interrupted by World War II service and return from that, then focusing on several competitions between 1946 and 1950, including Mr. Pacific Coast, Mr. Western America, Mr. America, Mr. World, and eventually winning Mr. Universe in 1950. So this guy didn't mess around. And this section also touches on his movie stardom. So he's starred in something like I think 19 films, with further evidence of his countless awards at the back of the book. So what's surprising to read was all this was done just training 3 days a week, with plenty of rest built in. So several of his early routines are shown, and Steve actually defines that more than 3 days a week is just overtraining, which ties into my own training frequency and what I've been doing since I got back to training at 45. So part two, it really steps up to gear with Steve's science of bodybuilding, with several key elements I've taken on board. So notably is the concentration and the auto-suggestion, that constant telling yourself that you can make the lifts, which is covered briefly and I think in a lot more depth really in The Keys to Progress by John McCallum. So there's some good information that I've adopted into my training to lifting principles, so reinforcing control of the weight and the lowering phase, and with a good full range of motion, good form, and slowly and smoothly, rather than trying to lift maximal weights. And I guess I can say I found myself guilty of trying to quickly blast through sets with as much weight as possible, versus his approach to getting the best from every last rep on every set performed, with cheating really only suggested on the last rep, just to finally get everything you can from it, and another rep is impossible. So we suggest rest periods of like 45 seconds to 1 minute, or just the time it takes to do a set, which again is a lot less than I would typically be used to doing, but he's a lot more open to sort of dropping the weight if required to stay within rep ranges on the following sets. So another key learning point from Steve's sequence of training body parts within a full body workout was starting with the shoulders and going right down to the legs. And Steve was very passionate about the classic balance and symmetry with individuality to the physique, and presents a lot of calculations of measurements to predict the maximum potential proportions based on height and bone size and body weight to work towards based on your own individual proportions, which is great for me as I'm similar height. I'm about 6'2", and I train naturally as Steve is advocating. So another principle is not overdeveloping the traps, as they can make shoulders appear a bit narrower, and the obliques, as again the midsection then can look wider, so it sort of impacts on that V taper that he was very famous for. And in fact I think he managed to maintain something like a 30-inch waist. It's crazy. And looking at the body as a symmetrical whole rather than just allowing certain body parts to develop easily. So in chapter 14 the classic physique routine is laid out, starting with some really good warm-up exercises, including the dumbbell swing that I'll definitely incorporate going forwards. So there's some other good suggested stretches as well, but I've built up a number of my own that I think they're my go-to, but it's nice to see that Steve also references similar ones. So the full body program is laid out following a sequence of shoulders, chest, back, arms, legs and lower back and neck, with just 2 minutes rest between the body parts. And I guess for me it's just that time just to set up really the next exercise, so I'm trying to get as quick as I can. So this is a valuable part of the book, and I guess what a lot of people will buy the book for. And it features some exercises that have perhaps gone out of favour maybe, such as upright rows, press behind neck, chin behind neck, barbell hack squats. But the thing that stands out in this workout could easily hit 2 hours plus to complete, as each body part has got 3 to 4 exercises for the most part, with 3 sets each. So Steve recommends training no longer than 2.5 hours, but that would be perhaps frowned upon these days, but ties in with a lot of other real silver era books such as Reg Park's Strength and Bulk course, and some of the routines that I was doing in the Keys to Progress. So I guess it's just about getting plenty of rest and effectively dedicating yourself to the workout and just maintaining the stamina throughout. So looking into the detail of the workout, it's a warm-up, 9 sets of shoulders, 9 sets of chest, 9 sets of lats, 9 sets of biceps, 9 on triceps, 15 sets for legs, 3 sets for lower back and 2 sets for neck. So that's 65 sets in one workout. So there's an economy of flow with the movements throughout the workout, as the blood is being slowly moved from one part to another. So that does help the speed a little bit of it, because there's less warm-up needed for each body part. There's not much emphasis on training abs within the workout, as they're already hit quite hard with other exercises. So as his early workouts only featured 1 set, and he made huge gains on these, my own approach really has been to follow the workout body part structure, but use exercises I feel more comfortable with, and limit each exercise to 1 all-out set after warm-up. So interestingly, other workouts mentioned later in the book for executives and seniors just feature 1 set per exercise. And actually, at the time of the book being published, with Steve in his senior years, he had cut back to 2 sets per exercise and was doing quite a lot of cardio and gone for more cables and machines. So I've run a number of the sessions now, and I've been refining the setup time and the exercises. So of the 16 or so exercises I'm doing, I think over 5 or 6 are smack on the same as Steve's way. But going into the routine, I was still overcoming some lower back injury, so I've been mindful of stressing that further. And I can safely say it hasn't aggravated at all. If anything, it's improved it. And also through trial and error, I wanted to find the minimal setup time for time efficiency in the workout. And also I've been using a metronome to time each second in the lift, just to get a click and keep the timing strict, because Steve again suggests 2 seconds lifting and 3 seconds lowering. So I'll also share where my strength and reps has increased, although some of this is getting used to more controlled lift timing. So my current workout schedule, I'm doing a warm-up with around a 5 or 10 kilo weight plate with a swing for 20 reps. I then move on to the seated Viking press, so I'm just doing 1 set in that. I've added a fair bit of weight to this with that controlled tempo, really straining on some of the first workouts, and now even adding the weight, I'm flying through this, so definitely getting used to it. I'm then doing some standing lateral raises. So I've experimented with lying side laterals, I've experimented with cable variations, but it's just taken too long to set up or perform, and I just want to blast through this. So I've resigned to just holding some weight plates and keeping the tension just at the side delts by not going all the way to the bottom. And then we're doing rear delt flies, seated. I've been experimenting a lot with an exercise that'll work for that, but I quite like the cable version. Although there's not a lot of weight being used, I can really feel it, and I think I can slowly progress on that. I think it's really important as well to train the rear delts, because there's just too much emphasis with a lot of exercises on the front delts, which can then bring your chest forward and cause a lot of impingement issues for some people. So then we move on to the chest, and I've been concentrating for my main exercise as a dumbbell bench press using a neutral grip. So it's I've never really trained the dumbbell bench press like that. I've always more gone just for a sort of middle grip. So that feels a little bit harder to do. As well, with the controlled rep range, I've had to be a bit less ego with the weight, but it's feeling really comfortable on the shoulders. And just that slow lowering phase is really getting a lot of tension there. And then I'm moving straight on to band chest flies. So I'm doing this as 2 sets, but each set is slightly different angle on the bench, so it's targeting a different area, because I want to just incorporate a lot more flies now. I've never really done them over the last sort of year and a half or so, and I just hit on this exercise and I found it works really well, and the tension is just crazy, and if anything it feels better than using cables for the same thing. So then I move on to the back. So I'm doing a lying forward on a bench, wide grip lat pull, and I really love this exercise, and I can feel a great stretch in the lower back, and it also feels really nice as a movement as well. And then flipping the bench around, I'm more or less keeping the weight the same, and then doing a seated row, just coming down to the chest, fairly close grip, but because of the previous set a lot of strength is lost, so I'm slightly stronger on that position, so it balances it out. Then we move on to biceps. So I've been doing a couple of bicep exercises, a lying cable bicep curl. So Steve does recommend that in this book. The directions aren't crystal clear, there's no illustration on that particular exercise, but I found the optimal setup for this, and I like the feel of the intensity of it. I'm just being mindful not to bring the shoulders up during the move, and keep a good range of motion. Then I've been doing the 45-degree curls, which I think Steve is quite noted for, and I've also followed the advice in the book and put a support bar behind me, and trying to offset the weight plates on the dumbbells as well, so holding the dumbbells very close to that side of the hand so they almost dip down. And when I'm using a weight that's a little bit irregular, I'll try and pile more of the plates onto one side of the dumbbell, and so the last half of those sets feel really intense. I'm definitely feeling that there's some good arm development now coming naturally from just incorporating that. And then I've been doing a seated triceps push down, so I can really feel the abs supporting this as well while I do it, and in that seated position it's preventing me cheating or leaning forward or putting just too much momentum into it. And also I'm then doing an overhead tricep extension. It's a little bit awkward just to get into position with that, but I just love the sensation of that exercise. I've recently seen videos of Vince Gironda also promoting that, so if he says it's good, it's got to be good, and it certainly feels good for me. So I wasn't actually doing that much concentrated arm work before hitting this workout, and I'm really feeling the benefit of it now, and just trying to hit those 12 reps and use a good weight. So then move on to legs, and at this stage, and when you're doing the workout, you feel like you've kind of had enough at this point. It feels like naturally it's the time to finish it. So then embarking on then a leg workout feels a bit mad, but I've been using his power drink, and that seems to just revitalize me, which is the honey, the lemon and the water. So for my leg work, I'm using the vertical leg press, and I'm also using bands to make the lift a bit more linear and add more weight to it. I'm going out for an all-out set with that. So with most of the exercises in the routine, Steve's just recommended sort of 8 to 12 reps, but I feel more comfortable just hitting a slightly higher rep range, especially on the leg press. So I'm aiming for around 15 to 20 reps. Then I'm moving straight on to the belt squat. So I've just reintroduced these now, and I'm using a support bar to grab onto to keep my back really good and parallel. And depending on the foot position and depth, I can get a good balance between the quads and the hamstrings doing that exercise. So I've tried also to do cable versions of belt squats, but I just prefer the bar version. It's just quick and easy to set up, and it feels solid and safe. I'll then move on to leg extension. So I'm just doing these lying back to get a real stretch in the quads. I'm just putting a pad under my legs as they're too long for my home machine. It's a bit rickety, but I can really feel it working. And I was trying originally, when I started the workout, to do the hack and Smith style squats that Steve was doing, elevated on heels, but I need a lot of practice to get those right, and I was feeling a bit weird on the knees. So I just want to push these exercises now to the limit, especially if I'm just doing the one set as well. And also I want to develop that rectus femoris muscle more in the quads, which hopefully this exercise will support. So then finally we've got the leg curl. So I'm making some really good progress on this. I did a lot of weight actually to what I was stuck on for a long time. And with the bench in a slightly more declined position, I feel stronger doing them. And it's a really good stretch as well at the start of the movement on the calves. So then I'll round off the workout really with calves on the leg press, as Steve suggests. So I'm actually just doing 2 sets of calves because it's all set up, but I'm just going with 2 different feet positions to do it, where I'm really making sure I'm getting a really deep stretch in both the top and the bottom of the movement. So if I feel like it or the back's feeling a bit stiff, I've been throwing in some reverse hyperextensions as well, just to finish off. So with all the warm-ups and things, it's taken about an hour and a half to complete this, and I'm getting used to the volume, and I don't feel actually completely exhausted from it, although I've definitely been sleeping more soundly. I think in the future, pushing it, I might look to add some more sets or exercises if I feel happy I can tolerate it after I'm really maxing out on every single one. I might get to the point of all his prescribed exercises and sets, but I feel it could be pushing it for me. So Steve also adds some further sections on super high intensity training with drop sets, antagonistic training with opposing muscle groups, and pyramid style training, which I might look at incorporating when I've milked the current program, which he says himself has to be adapted with different rep ranges and intensities as you go along. So I definitely feel I'm growing more on the program, and I've been doing lots of research as well into single set training. So I think the 2 things have come at the same time for me. It's just getting the mindset that you have to just go all out, and the set is the only opportunity to really push that muscle group or exercise. So with Steve's circuit training for executives later in the book, and the seniors programs that are in there for older lifters, it's also aligned to this way of working and just features more of a one set approach. So there's also other sections on posing, and there's a big section dedicated to power walking, which is of interest to me because of course Rudy can certainly take me on a power walk. So there's a good section on food, and with a lot of analysis actually on food groups and fat loss and Steve's typical diet that he ate during competition. So it doesn't go into as much detail as I'd hoped actually, but it needs to read, I think I need to read more between the lines with this. And then there's further insight into the question and answer sessions as well later in the book. There's a lot of interviews that people have done with him that have been transcribed. And he mentions around some of his power breakfasts and drinks, etc. So that sent me on many a trip to the supermarket looking for things like gelatine and honey. And his workout drink certainly does the trick during the intense sessions. So I was surprised at the relatively high balance of carbohydrates though that he suggested. But these days there's so many chemically enhanced refined carbs out there. I just try my best to personally use whole foods such as sweet potatoes, and I'm selective about what bread I'll eat and limit my exposure to some of those bad carbs. So the question and answer session actually really rounds out a lot of the learning in the book and re-emphasises then the themes in the book, where on some occasions they're not fully clear, and it goes into more detail then on training. And there's a section that's got a lot of value actually if you're just going to reread anything within it. So the closing section of the book as well has got some really good principles and guidance that would apply to any training really. So there's a full section on his preferred exercises, how to perform them with illustrations, which I liked, and that's quite similar to some of the Reg Park courses as well. So the appendices have got some great additional material, including finding his original garage where he worked out, with the workout actually still on the wall written out. So there's press coverage of him, impressions from mentors and friends. So most pages in the book have got some amazing photographs of Steve, with ones from his family life, friends, and more are included. So in conclusion, I think it's a fantastic book. It's well worth the wait and cost to have it shipped to the UK. So there's a high reread value, and it's really motivating to delve into. So whether it's Steve's reflections on growing up, military service, training aspects, which most people I'm sure will want to learn from, I think we have to bear in mind though that Steve had amazing genetics and bone structure, and he made some very rapid gains in his early training that are very obvious in early photos of him. So he does discuss that advantage though, but he's clearly applied himself to develop his physique. So I wish I'd got this book years ago when I was younger, and I want to learn more about Steve and his movies, so it'll steer me well as I continue to train and even just change into his principles. I'm seeing gains and I feel in really good shape. So until the next time, get a hold of this book, it's well worth it, and keep training at 45.